You have a super fund and someone has probably told you it is competitive. But the real question is whether industry or retail super leaves you with more money after 30 years of compounding. And that answer is worth a lot more than most people realise. This is not a small choice. Modelling a 35-year-old on a $90,000 salary with a $50,000 starting balance and 12% super guarantee, a retail fund returning 6% leaves them with about $295,000 less at 65 than an industry fund returning 7.5% using APRA long-run differentials and standard compound maths. That gap is the difference between a comfortable retirement and a constrained one. At a glance, the two are built differently. Industry funds run profit for member, keeping any surplus inside member accounts, while retail funds are generally owned by banks or financial institutions and can pay profits to shareholders, according to APRA and Industry Super Australia commentary. That structural difference is where the money story begins. Industry Super is built for the everyday worker who wants a strong, low-cost default and does not want to micromanage investments. APRA fund-level statistics show the not-for-profit segment, which includes industry funds, has generally beaten retail funds after fees over 5, 10 and 15 years, which is exactly the kind of consistency that compounds well over a career. The headline advantage is net returns kept inside the fund. APRA data cited by CanStar showed the not-for-profit segment averaging around 10.1% a year against 3.1% for retail over the 5 years to March 2022, and even modelling a far more conservative 1.5% long-run edge. That gap compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars for a median income worker. The honest weakness is choice. Industry funds usually offer fewer investment options and lighter personal advice, so a confident investor who wants to build a tailored portfolio can feel boxed in. For most members though, ASIC Money Smart notes that extra menu options do not guarantee better net performance, so this catch matters less than it sounds. Retail super suits people who genuinely want a wide investment menu, integrated advice, and the convenience of staying inside their bank's ecosystem. Simply Retirement rates retail funds as medium to high cost on average against low to medium for industry funds, so the trade-off for that flexibility is usually a higher price tag. The genuine strength of retail super is breadth. You often get more investment options, direct share investing and bundled advice, and ASIC Money Smart confirms choice and advice can add real value for members who actively manage their money. The catch is that this advantage only pays off if you actually use those features. The real catch is fee drag. Mainstream retail balanced options often charge between 0.8 and 1% a year against 0.5 to 0.7 for large industry options. And ASIC Money Smart warns that even small fee differences have a big impact on the money you have in retirement once they compound over decades. Round by round, the numbers tell the story. Modelled long-run net returns favour industry at around 7.5% versus 6%. Fees favour industry at roughly 0.5% versus close to 1%. And the profit for member structure keeps surplus with members per APRA. Retail takes the round on investment choice, which is a real but narrower win. On the softer criteria, the picture is more even. Illustrative default insurance for a member like our Persona runs about $250 a year in an industry fund versus $400 in retail. Consistent with industry funds, lower fee positioning. Retail wins on broader advice access and overall flexibility, so this round is genuinely split. Tally it up. Industry super takes the rounds that move the dollar needle most: net returns, fees, ownership structure and default insurance cost. Retail wins on choice, advice access and flexibility, which matter to a smaller group of engaged, hands-on members. For most people, one number settles it. A sustained 1 to 1.5% annual net return gap, layered with a roughly 0.4% fee gap, that ASIC Money Smart says compounds heavily, is what turns into around $300,000 less by 65. Unless you actively use retail's extra features, that gap is paying for options you never touch. For the typical worker, the verdict goes to industry super. Take Jess, 38, with $140,000 in a bank-linked retail balanced option, earning about 6% net against an industry fund averaging 7.5%. Over 27 years to 65, the retail path models to around $930,000, while the industry path reaches roughly $1.23 million, a difference near $300,000 driven by returns and fees. The exception is the engaged investor who genuinely uses retail's wider menu, direct shares and tailored advice to outperform after costs. If that is not you, the profit for member structure and lower fees make industry super the stronger default for most Australians. Here is the simple rule. Choose industry super if you want a low fee, strong performing default and you do not plan to actively manage your investments. Choose retail only if you will genuinely use its wider menu, direct investments and advice to justify the higher fees. And either way, use the ATO Your Super tool to compare net returns and fees and check your insurance before you move. Before you move $1, log into MyGov, open the ATO Your Super tool and compare your fund's net returns and fees against two large industry funds. If breakdowns like this help you keep more of your own money, subscribe to the fine print for more decisive, evidence-led comparisons